It's amazing what self-education and a desire to get to your goals can do and where it will take you. Chris Wooten had no experience in flipping, no experience in apartments, but now today, after flipping 20 homes remotely, he owns over 1,000 units in apartments. We're going to tell you how he did it here on the Fearless Investor podcast. Hey guys, welcome into another episode of the Fearless Investor Podcast. I'm Kyle Stanley, and I want to ask you two things before we get started today with Chris Wooten. Number one, if you haven't already, make sure that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel or you are rating and reviewing our podcast and subscribe there too. These are things that will help us to continue to spread the word. So if you can, just pause whatever platform you're listening to or watching on right now, hit that subscribe button, and either comment or rate and review. That would really help us out. Now, number two, do you have questions still about either how you can get started in real estate investing, Airbnb, any sort of investing, or are you looking to take it to the next level? Are you flipping houses right now and looking to get into multifamily, just like what we're teaching today with Chris Wooten? Are you looking to be able to maximize your ROI on these passive income properties and not sure how to do it? Those are questions that I'm talking to experts about all the time. I'm doing myself. I would love to be able to help you. All you've got to do is go to fearlesskyle.com/consultation and book a time with me, 15 minutes, absolutely free. And we are going to, I'm going to help you to be able to answer your questions, to figure out how you can get started or move up to that next notch, the next level in your business, so that you can continue to build this dream of a passive lifestyle that's built on investing, real estate, and all these other types of investments that we're talking about all the time on this show. Now, today, Chris Wooten, as I already kind of shared in the beginning there, he started flipping remotely as an active duty Marine. And then from there, got this itch of like, hey, what would it be like to own some apartments? Bought some with cash and now has tons of apartments and uses a strategy called infinite return, which he's going to explain a little bit in this episode as well. So before I give away the entire story, let's hear it now from Chris here on the Fearless Investor Podcast. All right, guys, welcome into another episode of the Fearless Investor. We've got from Atlanta, Georgia, Chris Wooten, who is a retired military and now current real estate investor. He's done some flipping. He's in real estate for multiple multifamily units, tons and tons of units under his belt right now. But first of all, Chris, thanks for being on the show. Thanks for your service, and I really appreciate you joining us here today.
Oh, thanks for having me on. I enjoy getting onto the show so I can give back to anyone listening.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we've got a mutual friend, Zach, who is all about leadership, and I know that if he has good things to say about people, then I want to learn more about them. And then when he told me that you have the military background plus hundreds of units in apartments, I was like, okay, yeah, this is definitely gonna be a fun conversation. So before we jump into all that, as always, I got to ask, what is your most interesting real estate investing story?
Most interesting real estate investing story would be finding a smaller apartment complex that was a still of a deal that I was able to work with and mold into developing an infinite return situation, which is to where I have been able to pull all of my capital out. I still own the property and it is still alive and kicking. It's great.
So when you say infinite return, can you just describe that for people so they can understand just how awesome that is?
So to calculate your returns, you're going to calculate what your NOI coming in is versus how much capital you have into the deal. And if you get to a point to where you can force the appreciation to where you can cash out refi or just flat out refi and be able to pull all of the capital back out, then essentially you don't have anything to calculate your percentage of return against. So then it becomes an infinite return.
So essentially you're making money off of no money in a deal.
You got it.
That's awesome. It's good stuff, man. We're going to be talking a lot about how you're doing those deals here in a little bit, but kind of catch people up. I mean, you started this whole journey while you were active duty, which like just blows my mind, to be honest. So kind of tell us why did you get into real estate? What did life look like before? What was that moment that you said, I got to do this, even though I'm not even in the, where were you on active duty when you started this? Just kind of give us the whole background.
Oh boy, I'm not even real sure what necessarily state I was in, because I did move twice since then. So my I waited till I was 15 years active, before getting married and really settling down. And my wife had mentioned that she was very interested in going more federal law enforcement way. So I was like, okay, when I do exit, I need to exit into something that I can be mobile depending on she's going to get reassignment. So what can I do? And I'd always enjoyed every time I would get restationed somewhere, uh, shopping markets, as far as literally getting down to the demographic and changes and developments happening in that specific neighborhood. I would pick neighborhoods that were up and coming and buy in there. And either it was a newer build property that I would have built with certain specifications to ensure that it endured any flex. And if I had to rent it out, I could. It had some more durable products in the property. Or if it was a property that maybe needed a little bit of work, put the little bit of work into it, and then I knew I could be positive coming out of it. So I always enjoyed that. So I was like, let's look at flipping houses
Hmm.
or something along those lines. But I was like, I don't have any money. I
Okay.
military dude. I don't make much. So I'm like, all right, what can I do? So I went to one of those weekend seminar things,
Yep.
to learn how to wholesale. And I got in there, I'm listening, I'm all jazzed up. This is awesome. Um, and I bought the coaching program.
Right.
Whew, that was expensive. Break out your credit cards. Go, hey, during the break, go in the back, get a credit line increase so you can put this on your credit card. And that's that
Do
is the
you
protocol.
do you remember the name of the company?
No, I don't.
That's how
um,
much they played a
eh,
role, huh?
really, because literally when I went to the free seminar and they were like, hey, sign up for the coaching, and the coaching took you to the weekend program.
Hmm.
Well, the weekend program, when I showed up at the hotel to go to the weekend program, the name of the company was what was holding the conference room. And I
Mm.
showed up and I gave them the name for whoever was the freebie. And they're like, we don't have one of those here this weekend. I was like, hold on, who's here for real estate investing? They're like, oh, this is this company. And I was like, I have no idea who that company is, but that's got to be the right one.
Okay.
So to the point, I didn't even know the name of the company. I just knew the guru that they were flashing up off of HGTV or whatever
Right.
that brought me into it. So I get in there, I do the whole weekend deal, um, and I not only do I get the coaching, but I pay even more. So I put 5 figures in this thing that I didn't have because I threw it on the credit card,
Mm.
and the whole deal is, hey, you get a little bit under your belt, you'll pay this off quick. Cool, let's do it. So finish up. They teach you pretty good, and if you really listen, you don't necessarily take it verbatim, but really listen. And probably my most valuable thing was how to do my own estimates of rehab.
Right.
Go to Home Depot, see what it costs per foot to do this, that, and the other thing. And being a little bit of an analytical person, I built an Excel spreadsheet that I could put those prices in. I
Mm.
could go on the tax website for the property and pull square footages and essentially make a renovation calculator without ever stepping foot into the property.
Nice.
So sweet, I've got this renovation calculator. I'm going to find a property, do the renovation calculator, and then I'm going to go wholesale it to somebody because that's all I know how to do. Well, I get my first one locked up in contract, and it came right off the MLS. I most of my flip property, I'd say probably 90% came right off the MLS.
And what years were
Just
these
getting
though?
15, 16, 17, and 18.
Wow. Okay.
So, yep. So definitely
Nice.
not the scruffy time. But I getting comfortable with putting alerts in there. I mean, literally, I would have stuff that would pop on the market and hit, and before the pictures had showed up on the listing, I already had my calculations done and had
Mm.
my agent on site submit an offer.
Nice.
So that was a way that I was able to get in there before everybody else. And every once in a while, we'd have some back and forth, but most of the time, I was the only one in it because I was in it so fast.
Wow.
So just a strategy is learning how to set up your alerts off of Redfin and Realtor are probably the most two reliable.
Okay.
Zillow and Trulia tend to lag a little bit. So I really use those, set up my alerts, and I would literally, as soon as something hit, I would get an alert. And then sometimes, like I say, I would get an offer in before the pictures even posted. And that was, so by the time I got to that point, I had my calculator for renovation expenses that I built. I also, same workbook, had another tab that gave me my max allowable offer. So it
Okay.
would take into consideration the rehab amount, the the current contract price, the after repair values, all those different pieces, plus what you're going to put into it for renovation. And then I had a scale for after repair values. So I'd have like a 75%, 85%, and 95%, just to see where I'm falling in. And I could just literally go into my spreadsheet, plug in numbers, and it would spit out numbers for me. And that's how I was able to get in so quick.
That's awesome. And again, just so we can paint the picture for people, you're doing this when you're in a different state for properties that were in Atlanta, or where was it?
So I was doing Charlotte, North Carolina, Wilmington, North Carolina, Nashville, Tennessee, and Clarksville, Tennessee. And
Okay.
I started off, I was in Virginia.
Okay.
So,
Wow. And and you
yep.
had boots on the ground in those areas, or were you just relying on the realtor? Who are you doing that with?
So the way I picked my, and this, they taught this in the wholesaling course, was build your team in the area if you're not physically there. So I had a GC in the area, and an inspector in the area, and a realtor in the area, and a title company in the area.
Nice.
And a lot of that you get through referrals. Most of the time, my agent would be the one that I would research and find, and then I would ask them for referrals for everybody else.
Okay.
And then I would call and verify and make sure I was comfortable with everything. And literally, out of the more than 20 that I did over almost 4 years remotely, I think I only went into about 4 of them. I
Wow.
would typically do the first property the team would do, just to make sure it was to my expectations, and we would tweak if necessary. But during the scope of work, I would get pictures and FaceTimes, and there's so much technology. You don't physically have to be there all the time.
Yep.
And that helps give that distance and delegate a little bit, but you got to have the trust in the team to do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that where your confidence came from? Because for me, I know, like, man, if I wasn't able to put a foot in the property before putting in an offer, or after putting in the offer and then going and looking, like, I don't know that in the beginning I would have had that much confidence. So where was that confidence coming from?
A lot of it's learned. I mean, when Marine Corps side of the house, I was running aviation maintenance teams,
Mm,
who knows where in the world. Um, so getting used to having that maintenance team, knowing their competency, and being able to rely that they're out there doing the job the right way, phone call, email back and forth to get updates, and just being comfortable with that process
hmm
helped me with that aspect. But it's really, you just got to get comfortable with your team, and as soon as you're comfortable with your team, then it gives you the courage, I guess, to go ahead and allow them to take some things and execute without you physically being present and having the constant oversight.
So trust in your team, I tell people all the time, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, and you have your gut intuition, but you get those second opinions from the people that know a little bit more than you do. So it sounds like that's pretty much what you did.
You got it. Yeah, it's definitely, you don't want to hire on the cheapest, but you don't necessarily need the best either. You got to find that middle ground. And a good thing that I was always using was, hey, I'm going to bring you repeat business after
Mm,
repeat business after repeat business.
yeah.
So it's a benefit to work with me on cost so we can keep this thing going. And that tended to work. And I even noticed it the first couple of evolutions with a team. It might cost me a little bit more, but then I would see the numbers start to come in a little bit, and
hmm
they just knew that we were going to keep rolling. I mean, I had 2 teams that I kept going for just shy of the 4 years total. And then the other 2 teams we cycled out of. So
Nice. Well, that's awesome. We just gave our audience a little bit of a how to do this remotely kind of tutorial. But as we continue to adjust with everything going on in the world, flipping continues to be one of those things that's just it's getting more and more risky by the day, and especially not knowing what tomorrow's market's going to look like. I think a lot of people are still at that point where they're either the sellers are delusional and think they can still get exactly what the ARV is,
Right.
or the buyers are trying to squeeze every penny out of it right now until the market does something here, and then suddenly either there's going to be great opportunities for flipping or there's going to be no opportunities for flipping. One of two things is going to happen here, I think. But
Mm-hmm.
what I know is that you did what a lot of people talk about doing, but you actually did it, and you're doing it successfully. And you took all this active income that you made from flipping and you put it into a passive asset, and now you're continuing to build. So take us through that transition. Why did you start? Yeah, first of all, why? Why did you start getting into apartments? And then how did you make that transition?
So I was going to tag into something else too. So I went from the wholesaling into the flipping because I realized the margins were better on the flipping side. So I was like, hey, I'm just going to do this.
Right.
I got to a point to where I started to grow a capital that I could not take on additional projects. I was reaching my limitation with still being on active duty. So I needed somewhere to put those funds. So I just put the word out to my teams, and I was like, hey, if you come across any apartment complexes, let me know, and I will definitely. I've got cash ready to go. And sure enough, we got our first one through the door that way because it was a partnership going south. The partnership had previously built the property,
Okay.
so they didn't have much of anything in it, if anything in it, because they, for all I know, they probably refied out of it. Um, and then I was able to come in with cash and buy them out in a very short span. And there was a little bit of a end of the year tax implication thing they were trying to beat as well. And I was like, oh yeah, we can definitely close this thing by the end of the year. So just being that opportunity that they needed, I was able to just come in and help them out of a situation. Um, and that's how I got my first apartment complex. And what I was going to say too is you were mentioning flipping is kind of an unknown right now. You definitely need to have multiple exit strategies. So
Mm-hmm.
everything I would write to, I'm either going to sell it or I'm going to rent it. And I knew both options would work. So you just need to have that worked in there as well. But on the apartment side of the house, as I had that apartment, there was things that needed to be done. You needed some TLC because the guys had built it and pretty much forgotten about it.
Okay.
So it needed some TLC, but we got it up and running. We got professional property management in there, so the occupancy jumped really quick, and we were pushing 18 months. We had pushed the rents 200 a door easy.
Really? And
So
how many doors again?
that one was 16.
Wow.
So we had a significant jump right out the well, roughly right out the gate. It was definitely the first year was a little shaky, and I even now I'll tell anybody going into a acquisition, don't expect to make anything your first year. You're getting in. You may have to change out property management. You may have to change out maintenance folks. There's going to be pop-up expenses. You just got to get used to the property. So that first year, don't expect anything. If you get stuff, great, but don't expect it. But then you'll start to see things start turning over when you get past that first year, and you won't need to be putting as much into it financially because you will have already buttoned everything up that first year. So then rolling into the second year, I started seeing the NOI grow, and I was like, oh, this is getting interesting.
It's nice. Yeah.
Well, sure enough, the adjacent property was not for sale, but the owner was poking around that he was open to that option. I was like, all right,
Okay.
what do you got? Um, mirror property. However, his mirror property was once again anywhere from 150 to $200 less than my doors per rent. And a
Hmm.
lot of that was just the customer service and the just keeping up with the property. Um, so I was like, hey, here we go. I overpaid just a hair. It wasn't much. I still felt pretty good about it. But what I was able to do within a year of buying that one, I was able to pull both of them through refi, and then those were
Hmm.
my infinite return wins. So the one I had for 3 years by the time I got to the infinite return, and then the other one I had just at a year and hit infinite return that fast because I already controlled the market in that space because I had the adjacent property.
That's awesome. Let me make sure I understand these first two deals. Are you buying those with all of your own money? Okay.
And those are mine. Those are mine.
Okay. So you buy these two, you increase the rents, you start doing it the right way, you refi, you get all of your money back, more money, or how much did you get back? You remember?
Yeah, I got a little bit over. It was like 106%. So I
That's
got a little
great.
bit over.
That's
Yep.
great. Then what happens from there? Because those are your first basically 32 units. You're
Right.
at, through partnerships and
Mhm.
syndication and everything today, over 1,000 units. So there
Yep.
had to
Yep.
be some sort of boom, lightning moment of like, let's soar.
Right. So I was looking back at how much time and effort I was putting into flipping because I was still flipping when I had those two.
Okay.
Um, and I was just looking at the time and effort. And I'm like, man, for that amount of time and effort, I can go search for my next multifamily. And those are so much, the tax benefits are
Hmm.
incredible in that space versus wholesaling or flipping. So I'm like, man, I like what I can keep because then I don't have to make as much. And my whole purpose for doing this is essentially time freedom and mobility freedom. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go full on apartments. So as soon as I retired, I was like full on retire or full on apartment investing. And I'm in and I'm shopping and I'm seeing how things are going. And I'm just like, man, I really want to go bigger, but I don't have the money to go bigger. So how do I do that? And then I heard mention of syndication, and I'll tell you, just 2 years ago, I didn't know what syndication really was.
Yeah.
Um, so I went to a weekend boot camp. I learned what syndication was, and then I did my own homework to get a little bit deeper understanding on that. I wasn't really feeling going through the high paid course route again because there's just so much information out there.
Sure.
If you're if you're able to piece it together and make a story out of it, and that's essentially what I did. Was I got a book. It kind of gave me all the highlights, and I said, okay, off of this highlight, I need to fill in some blanks. This highlight, I need to fill in some blanks, and that gave me a roadmap or a storyline to really fill in that whole component. And then I was like, all right, I'm by that time I was about 8 months out of the Marine Corps. I was like, now I'm ready to do the syndication thing. Let's go. So kicked off, and we just started taking down doors. We took down three last year. Well, three direct to me last year, one direct to me this year, and then I partnered in with a couple of others. One, two others last year.
Okay.
So that essentially stacks out the whole spread.
So I think the common theme that I'm hearing here is no matter if you're flipping, no matter if you were doing apartment complexes, and I'm sure a lot of this probably comes from your ability to do it in, during active duty and being in the military. But you got the big picture, and then you got to work and fill in the gaps. You learn the little things along the way to make sure that, hey, just like what you said, you learned how to go to Home Depot and price things out. You made your own calculator, which, like, good job on that. That's awesome. um, and from there, when you got that first deal, even though I guess you would say the structure of what you did was wholesaling, you then looked at, wait, I'm leaving this, how much money on the table if I don't raise the money and just sell it? No, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to go figure out how to go raise the money. I'm going to figure out how to get the contractor. And you just filled in those gaps.
Right.
Would you say that is for you, like, did that come naturally, or was that something you had to teach yourself being a problem solver like that?
Being in aviation, we tend to be very attention to detail oriented. So knowing to take the macro story and build in the micro was had become natural.
Mhm.
But what happens to a lot of people is they get stuck in, everybody talks about analysis paralysis, but they get stuck in the macro. So they're just hearing the same stuff on repeat. There might be a slight little twist, but they never get deep enough to get comfortable. Once you're comfortable and once you find comfort, that's when you take action. And the same thing happens with your team. Once you get comfortable with your team, then you allow your team to take action. As long as there's fear involved, because either you're not comfortable, so then you're not going to have the courage to take action, or you're not comfortable with your team, so you're not going to have the courage to delegate those actions, you're going to continuously just stay in that loop.
Mm. That's good. That's good. I tell people all the time, you either are letting fear conquer you or you're conquering fear. Um,
Yes.
so that's awesome, man. All right. So the tough question right now, how are these apartments performing during all of this nonsense going on?
Oh, it's definitely interesting because it is state by state, and we've got
Yeah.
assets in multiple states. Most everything's in the southeast, so at least we're relatively all, as far as legislatively, on the same steps. But we do have different amounts of collections. But when I write because I write the property going after that infinite return model.
Hmm.
um, we buy essentially a very well stress test property. So in this environment, we are still coming out net positive slightly.
Yeah. Well, at least it's not net
Even
negative.
correct, even though
Yeah.
we do have some properties that we may have really good occupancy on numbers, but our economic occupancy, so our actual collections are sitting low 80s on a couple. Most of them are actually doing pretty good though.
Good.
We're typically 91 to 94 by the end of the month. And that's the other thing we've noticed too is we've got we still get good collections. It just takes people longer to get it together. And we're good with that. Hey, come in to talk. And it goes back to the customer service piece that I've mentioned on the first two properties. Come in early in the month, tell us what's going on, and we'll wipe your late fee. So people come in, hey, I'm having some issues, blah, 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 blah. Cool. We wipe that late fee and then they just pay us as they can through the month. And then if they need to continue out, we put them on a payment plan. I mean, we're here to help and serve the people as best we can. We definitely don't want to put anybody in a stressful situation or hardship situation.
Yeah.
So we're doing everything we can to help.
So am I right that because you use this infinite return strategy,
Mhm.
and there's likely, some forced, like you said, forced appreciation. Essentially, you come in, rents are 600, now you're pushing up to 700, $800.
Mhm.
I'm assuming because you buy it at a wholesale price, that you're not having to be like these luxury apartments, like the Cardones are doing, and having to be at 91% occupied in order to break even. Where are you needing to be breaking even?
Most of our stress test out in the upper 70 range.
Yeah,
And they vary property to property, but most of them will stress test out upper 70.
that's great. So if I'm interested in getting into this type of exit strategy, I hear your story. I hear, okay, he started with flipping and then he was able to go buy an apartment complex with cash, which means there was no loan. So no one was like coming to see like, hey, does Chris have the managing experience? And which is a very awesome way to get started, very unique though as well. A lot of people are learning how to get into apartments where they do need to get a loan and they need to, and then suddenly there's this approval process that they're going to look at your manager experience. So I guess my question is, A, do you suggest getting into this right now? And B, if so, what way, how do people get started?
Getting started with apartments right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, so I like, and once again, I didn't know anything about syndicating or necessarily even JV partnering when I first started apartments, but now I do. So if you're wanting to get started into apartments and you don't have that experience, find somebody to partner with. How can you bring value to that person
Love
that
it.
does have the experience, that does have the net worth, that does have the liquidity? And what you'll find, especially when you get into the bigger syndications, is you do have to bring people together to hit the liquidity numbers, the net worth numbers, et cetera. So you just find those folks that are out there that meet those marks. And then I can bring value by doing this, whatever that is. If you have really good connections in the city and you're able to find a property and you've got a good contractor contact, so I can bring value by bringing the team together. And here's a property, let's take it down. Okay, and depending on who the sponsor is the terminology. um, they may be all for it. Maybe you're good at analytics and they need that piece. Maybe you're good at networking and communicating with investors and they need that piece. That's what I typically need help with, especially in the syndication side because I'm such an analytical.
Yeah.
My I, as I say, I math well, so my English is lacking. So I always like to have somebody on the team that's an investor relations specific that can
Okay.
take my information from weekly and monthly calls and translate it into investor speak, because mine is very, here's what's the numbers, here's what's
Yeah.
happening, and they're like, they don't need to know all that. You're going to drown them out, and they're not going to
Yep.
care. Like, okay, got it.
That's awesome. Okay. So partner with someone that knows what they're doing, bring value to them, do deals with them, and you can build up your confidence and experience that way.
That is true. Yep,
Awesome.
definitely win them with them. Yep.
Love it. Love it. Chris, hey, you have brought so much good information today and an inspiring story, honestly, to if nothing else, people see that, here's a guy that was active duty and doing deals hundreds, if not maybe even 1,000 miles away. And to me, like, there's no excuse if you're able to do that. Why can't other people do it? So how can people connect with you?
Real Chris Wooten. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn, but I don't know what the tagline is on LinkedIn. But you can definitely get me on all the social media channels at Real Chris Wooten.
Awesome. And any last words for our audience?
Last words would be, now is a good time to definitely get yourself, build your foundation and get yourself ready to go forward. The deals aren't necessarily shaking out right now,
Mm-hmm.
but you give it a few more months, and that's when things are going to start to unravel a little bit. And even if we don't get a solid unravel, you're going to have some more distressed situations from where people bought properties with a little bit of inflated valuations, and now those aren't coming true. So they're in a little bit of a pressure space. They're not actually distressed, but they're in a pressure space, and they would be willing to sell if the right option came across the table.
That's awesome. Be ready to get that money so that you can start getting those deals when they come across your desk. Chris,
You
thank you
got it.
so much for helping our audience today to conquer the world of investing. We appreciate you, brother.
Thanks for having me. Anytime I can give back, I love it.
All right, let's drive you to the show notes for this one. fearlesskyle.com/Chris Wooten. That's ChrisWooten. And that's where you can find all of those ways that he said that he would love to be able to connect with you. Chris doesn't even have any education. He doesn't charge anyone anything. He loves giving back. And that's what I loved about having him on the show today. It's that analytical mind of problem solving plus leadership. He really has combined a lot of things together to be able to have a successful real estate investing business, and you could be right there alongside with them. So why not just go over to the show notes, connect with Chris. Again, it's fearlesskyle.com/Chris Wooten. And as you do that, you will continue to be able to expand your mind, learn more about investing, and conquer the world of investing. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Fearless Investor Podcast. We'll see you next time.